Hey everybody, Aaron Elton here on Priceless Farms. We are taking this video to show you all of the different challenges that we've had with the first pilot plantation of our Lyra trees under the Ventree model. Now this is for all of you investors out there who put in some money on this. This is a full detailed accountability of everything that we've had to face over the last 2.5 years, 3 years of trying to bring up this first Lyra plantation in what we call our lower acreage. This is a valley area. Right here beside me you can see one of the giant Lyras that was planted right in this valley area, and there's a number of them. If you look across this landscape, you can see we've planted most of our boundary lines with this. This one here is about 4 years old, and it was from these observations that we had determined planting in these valley soils was going to be very conducive for our first plantation. If you look down at the soil quality, you can see here the valley soils are absolutely lush, black organic soils receiving all of the runoff over centuries of erosion from the landscape above us. And throughout the last 2 years, especially the first 1.5 years of planting, we faced incredible challenges which were unforeseen to us, and that's what this video is about. But it's also about the way in which we're mitigating these challenges so that we make sure we get a good return on investment to you, albeit that we've faced a lot of challenges that are going to slow down the rate at which we expected to be able to get that return on investment back to everybody. And so just walk with me over the next few minutes. Please take your time and watch this video, because it's going to be very informative for you, and it's going to give you a look at the type of difficulties and challenges that really push us as farmers to the limit in terms of creating systems that will continue to work for future investments so that this model can expand out well into the future. So as we're walking through this area, I want to give you a little bit of the history, because understanding why we choose to place various different trees and plants where we do is really important to understanding the value that you're going to get out of the land and out of your investment. But it's also going to explain to you, basically give you a good picture of what's happened to us. So this area here was planted about 4 years ago. We have 3 Shamba families. Follow me this way. And you can see the production is very nice. These trees have already given, many of them have already given a production cycle within the first 4 years. And we'll show you that in the video here. But you can see where we've cut and they've regrown, and we've cut and they've regrown. And many of them grow with 2 stalks in the beginning, which we leave. And they're just one of the most prolific producers. And you can see here as an example, look at the tight spacing as well. And so the justification and the reasoning for planting in the valley soils was that we could do extremely tight spacing and get really good production with these trees. And hypothetically, that's because there's a lot of nutrients in the soil, and there's also a lot of water throughout the year. And so it's these observations that made us decide, let's do the valley, let's fill it up. However, we reached these challenges, which I'm going to show you now. So here we have a old Shamba site. So behind me there used to be a family living in this small forest. That was about 4 years ago. They planted the forest here that you see, and this was a valley area. And there's a reason why they're no longer here. And there was 3 families who were impacted like this. A sugarcane company acquired 5,000 acres of National Forest Reserve, which was a savanna, wet, dry tropics forest, upslope from us, upslope from this valley area. And they cleared the entire 5,000 acres of trees within 6 months' time. This was back in 2016 and 2017. And so we watched as about 20 bulldozers plowed through the landscape, just like Lord of the Rings Mordor when Frodo is moving through the landscape, turning those trees into charcoal, turning them into cooking fuel, and then just basically decimating the landscape into a desert in order to then eventually plant the sugarcane. That rainy season, I warned everybody down here. I said, beware, because I think there's going to be some flooding coming. And lo and behold, the largest rain event of the year yielded a massive rainstorm, and about 1 meter of muddy water came down through that landscape and onto this valley floor here. And these families, which have upwards of 7 to 8 little children with them, had to take refuge and run under the thunderstorm and inside this deluge of rain, all the way up to one of our other structures, which we called the Bavubuka Center, which was a teen center at the time, a space for young people to be able to, be there and do what teen centers do, which is activate them. And they ended up taking refuge there, and that center turned into their homes for the next year and a half, leaving this area basically destroyed in terms of livability. At that point, we talked to the sugarcane company and we told them what had happened. Now, these are people who are capable of essentially contracting the military to do their bidding. Very powerful people. So we couldn't come up against them in any sort of lawsuits or anything like that. It's just too dangerous. But what we did do is we expressed to them the concern over the fact that the runoff was coming onto our land. And subsequently, they placed a very large drainage trench along the boundary line of our two properties, which we believed and which we saw was going to now divert any future floods from coming onto that landscape. So we thought that was going to be mitigating the flooding issue. And it wasn't until after planting the Ventree plantation that we realized the floods were going to come back, and I'll show you exactly why. But you can see here the growth rates of these trees. It's quite nice, and there's a lot of production in the soils up here. Now this is the upper part of the valley floor, and these are older trees that were planted well prior to any flooding that took place. But let me take you over to the trench right now, and you can see the size of this trench that they dug to divert this massive catchment of water away from our land. So this is the direct boundary line between us and what used to be a 5,000 acre forest, which is now sugarcane plantations. And this is the catchment drainage trench that the sugarcane company had put in. And so it was because they had put this in that we believed the chances of flooding on this property were basically zero. And that was one of those, so those are the two justifications of why we planted in our valley with these lyra trees. Intensive nutrients, visible excellent growth rates from previous years' plantings around domiciles and around the roads in the same area. And then also we didn't believe that flooding was ever going to happen again. Now we're going to go down to the end of this, and you're going to see where what happened in 2019 and 2020 was the largest rain events in the last almost 50 years, 60 years. So shortly after planting our first plantation in 2008, the end of 2018, in 2019, the entire region of East Africa started experiencing a massive surge of rain, which filled this trench so full, at the very end of it, it became backlogged, blocked up. And at a certain point, just where we planted our trees, the wall broke over, and the water then was re-diverted back into our plantation. And I'm going to show you exactly where that took place. So let's go see that right now. So right here, you can see, if you angle down, you can see where this wall and the way the water was blocked downhill. You know, we're on a very, very flat, very slight gradient. The water backflowed and filled up the trench, and this wall caved in, which caused the entire front and back end of that water system and all the subsequent rain events that season to come right here directly into our lyra plantation, where we had thought that it was absolutely impossible to see any flooding. And this had happened after we had previously planted eucalyptus in our lower section. So the land, like I said, is on a very slight gradient. So we have the upper section and the lower section, 10 acres, 10 acres. 25,000, 25,000 for a total of 50,000 trees. And our original design, for those of you who remember, we wanted to do 10 acres of lyra and 10 acres of eucalyptus. And the eucalyptus section, during our first planting, late 2018, there was a drought shortly thereafter. And the eucalyptus seedlings all burnt from the hot sun. The droughts here are extremely powerful. They burn different types of trees, and the young eucalyptus seedlings could not survive. What we realized there was that the 10 acres of our upper acreage, which was the lyra plantation, they survived because they have this uncanny ability to survive in extremely harsh weather conditions when it comes to hot sun. But what we've discovered now, after replanting, so the second planting of the lower acreage being younger seedlings, getting flooded killed them as well. And so this flooding really set us back. First, the drought set us back by killing all of the young eucalyptus seedlings. That's when a drought is when the dry season begins too soon, and it goes for a longer period of time than normal. Subsequently, just after that drought in 2019, after we had replanted with the young lyra seedlings, then the floods came. Now, what did we do? We came and we worked with the sugarcane company to extend and push their drainage trench even further down the landscape. And we also put in drainage trenches of our own throughout the plantation by hand, on the roads and all over. So we thought, okay, this should mitigate the problems. And we witnessed that it was working in certain areas. Lo and behold, the rainy season of early 2020, after we planted this second plantation, came even harder than the first floods of 2019. So 2020 ended up being the biggest rain events throughout that year. And again, we lost the lyra plantation, the second one, because they were so small, to flooding again. No matter how much drainage we put in, the sheer volume of water which was hitting the soils was just too much for the young seedlings. And the whole region was experiencing flooding. And I'll just give you an example so you get an idea of how much water came into the region at that time. Lake Choga, the lake that we're on with the Nile River, is 664 square miles of open water. It rose by 10 feet, okay? And that's the level of water that we were facing. So this was now killing our second planting, okay? Actually, even our third planting, because after we had dug the drainage trenches, we planted it again. We planted it for a third time. We're very tenacious. We have all the seed stock. We have a continuous nursery. So getting the seedlings back in the ground is not a really big deal for us. It's a lot of labor. It's a lot of effort. And it's really painful to watch these types of events do what they do. So now what we've decided to do is that acreage, we're going to plant it with flood-resistant bamboo. And I'm going to talk about the bamboo towards the end of this video, because the bamboo is now the third species. If you remember, in Ventree, we start with moringa, okay, lyra, and we were trying to see if eucalyptus was going to work for us, but we scratched that off of our list. And now we're adding bamboo, and we have 11 species, and I'll talk more about that later. But we're going to be basically filling that area up with bamboo now because it's more appropriate when there are heavy rains. Because it's such a flat land, even with drainage trenches, the water doesn't remove itself fast enough. So you do get very wet, what we call wet feet for those trees. And the lyra trees thrive in drier conditions. So I want to focus now on this top plantation. This is the top 10 acres where we have 25,000 trees that are now 3 years old. And I want to talk more about that. So let's move in there and we'll pick up the discussion. Okay, so here we are. This is the upper acreage which survived all of the floods and all of the droughts. And what we've noticed over the years of observing them is that flooding stunts lyra trees. So this is almost coming to 3 years now. And as I showed you in the beginning of the video, 4-year-old trees are this big. So our expectations have been massively reduced for the first, the speed of this investment. And you can see here that this is obviously stunted, and there's a couple reasons for that. Cascading reasons, I'll say. The flooding, of course, but the shock from the flooding, we believe, has caused the trees to produce seeds. Don't pan up. So it's caused the trees to go into survival mode, which makes them push out seeds. So we've witnessed over the last year and a half after the flooding and during the flooding is that the trees started producing seed. And what that means is they stopped focusing on growth, personal growth. They're focusing on creating the seeds for the next generation. Perhaps that's some genetic ability to throw seed into the future for better conditions, okay? And those are basically the issues that we believe has happened. When roots of trees like this get too much water over too long of a period of time, they lose a lot of their ability to grow because they're being choked out. I liken it to being waterboarded. Not that that's ever happened to me, but I've had near drowning experiences, so you can imagine what it feels like to have too much water, you know, where you're trying to breathe, because the roots are really very much trying to breathe, just like the leaves are. And that symbiosis needs to work together. So the flooding throws off that balance. We hoped that the trees themselves would rebound once the water subsided. And we've given it over a 6-month period now where we've seen the weather conditions coming back to normal. The ground is drier and pretty much the way it should be. And they're not really growing back too quickly because, again, they're still putting on seeds. Now, coming down, as I previously mentioned, one of the reasons we love the lyra tree is because it does continuously regenerate itself after you cut it. And so what we're seeing here, if you pan up just briefly, you notice in the upper branches, there's no real regrowth, okay? You just see some seed production at the top of the tree, and there's no regrowth happening on the bulk of the tree. But down here, if you can just take one step closer, you can see all of these new little shoots coming up. And what that tells me is that there are new roots growing in the better conducive conditions of a new season, let's say, whereby if I cut this here now, I believe that this production is going to come up as fast as we expected it to in the first place, as long as those massive floods don't come back and do what they did before. So we've adjusted our model in the sense that we're now looking at turning this into furniture. We're looking at turning this into wood siding, and we're turning these into walking sticks, really nice carved walking sticks, which we'll be selling at a higher profit. So instead of just selling the pole wood and the timber as we wanted to you know, downstream markets, if you will, we're deciding now we're going to do a lot of value addition ourselves, and we're going to include the value addition value to the investors so that we recuperate from these losses and from these damages over time. Okay, and I'm going to show you what that looks like as well. But right now I'm just going to cut this one for you, so maybe you can take a step back and we'll cut it down. You hear the seeds coming off? Let me just grab some seed. There's probably about 100 seeds have just fallen off. Come closer. I'm just going to take a few seconds here and collect these seeds. Okay, here they are. Okay, these are the new ones. These are the ones which are ready for planting here, these dry ones. And another thing that we've realized from this experience is, you know, as we're looking, what other value can we get other than timber? There's some very nice papers out of India showing, because this is a cousin to the neem tree, it has a very strong pesticidal effect on moth species. So these are high oil content seeds, and we've started spraying using this oil content in our sprayers, and it's had very good effect on some of the pests that are very common to tropical crops. So this is another crop now that we're getting out of this, which we did not expect to get from this plantation early on or at all, as we had intended to be cutting it for timber. But now we're actually collecting these seeds, and a beautiful thing about this seed, if I open this up, it's a very hard shell, you'll see that there's actually 4 seeds inside the one nut. And we just realized that recently when we saw, you know, one seed. Well, we've known that one seed could produce many seedlings, but we didn't realize that there was actually 4 seeds inside each nut, each shell. And that's a beautiful thing. So this is a pesticide that we're going to start producing, and we're going to use it ourselves. And because we're also getting into the cosmetic industry, with the oil production from our moringa seed production, which is massive. I mean, it's just popping off. We have so much moringa seed now. We're going to use the same oil process, oil press, to get this oil as well. Okay, so we've got the cosmetic oil, and then we've got a perfectly fine organic pesticidal oil, which shows very strong effect against most of the moth species, which are hugely a huge burden to so many farmers. And so that's another product that we're going to explore, and we'll keep you up to date with that, with respect to what those markets actually look like as we start to sell nice products like that from the farm. So I'm just going to scatter these because those will go into the environment. We do come in and collect them up. I'll get back to cutting this. This is one of the things I love about Lyra. It's very hard wood. You can see that heartwood. And so these poles that have been stunted, they've put on a lot of heartwood. So they actually make very, very nice walking sticks and very nice log furniture, twig furniture. I can't believe how hard this is. Okay, here it comes. Hey! All right, come closer, come closer. So, should probably just be using a saw, but okay, so here we've got the pole. This is great for, you know, log and twig furniture. You can see the heartwood here. If you look down, see that? It's very, very hard. It's just like, you know, any other sort of teak or mahogany. Not as hard as them, but very nice, especially once it dries up. I've taken a section off. The top section. And this is what I'm talking about with walking sticks. So we can do taller ones like this for hiking, and then we can do the handheld ones as well. And different shapes, different sizes. Each one will be unique. You clean it, you shave it, you get a really nice walking stick. Now this will sell for about 20,000 shillings when it's done. And we'll put about 2,000 shillings, 3,000 shillings into it. So that, just the tip of that can sell for around, that's about, I'd say that's about $6 in a craft shop. So wholesale, we'd say around $3 to $4. So this whole concept of value addition is a big component of our learning curve here, because we realize that not only can we obviously make more value by crafting these, okay, but we're also producing more jobs. Because there is such a higher value, we have to pay people to do it. So we're opening up new jobs for young people to come in and do all the work to strip this down, sand it, paint it up, put a little lash on there, and then brand it. And we're going to be selling these walking sticks with little bags of seed and a little card promoting the Ventree initiative to reforest with sustainable indigenous trees to reduce the impact that humanity is having on all the other forests out here in East Africa. So it's a beautiful thing. And then here we have the timber. So come back over, come closer, and you can see, I'll show you again, and I've done this many times. I cut this one while I was chopping because I'm doing a quick job. So I'm going to pull that one off. But down here you can see all the other growth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, ultimately like around 8 new seedlings. So what I'm going to do, this is our next season's production, okay? So this is all regrowing. And my theory, which we now are going to see over the next 2 years, is that we're going to regrow just 2 of these. So I'm taking them off like this, okay? They're little sprouts at this point. Very easy to do by hand. And I am going to leave only 2 surviving. 2, maybe 3. So this one and this one. I really like that. And just come over here, I'll show you another one. I've skipped one, and I've done a second one here. And the same thing, but this is more pronounced. You can see it easier on the video. 1 and 2. And here's a third one. Hard to see with the grass here. Here's a third one here. I'm going to pluck that off. These little nodes here are also coming up. So you can see these little balls. I'm just going to shave them off. Okay, now all of the production is going to go into these two. So this is our next cycle, this is our next generation. And what we've decided to do for this cutting is we're cutting every second tree so that we can see whether or not the existing trees may bounce back, okay, and bring on that girth. That's also going to leave us with more seed production, because this one's now going to take another year before it can produce seed. But you'll be surprised how fast this will grow now. If it doesn't flood, we'll get those original growth rates that we were after. And so this is, again, this is how we're just continually working with it, taking a step back, looking at what's going on, and just trying to use the knowledge that we have to say, let's create as much value as we can out of this, but also keep the plantation going. All right. And I'm going to take you up to our upper acreage now, where throughout this entire period of difficulty, we've continued to plant more and more seeds. So this project and this initial investment, we've actually shifted and spread to other areas on the site, where Ventree has actually purchased a 23-acre plot recently, and we're continuing to plant more and more trees there. And the point I'm getting at is that your original investment is very much intact. I'm just bringing you along for the journey of all of these challenges that we're mitigating. And before we go up, I want to walk with you down to the lower flooded acres, because we haven't done that yet. And I want to show you where we're planting the bamboo seedlings, where we've just put in 4,000 young bamboo plants, which are, they love water, okay? And that's a prolific production model. I will show you where we've planted similar species on the same type of land 4 years ago as well. You can see the size there. And it's just an amazing system. So the bamboo is going to give us as much, if not much more production. And that's with, we're associating ourselves now with BVU, which is Bamboo Villages Uganda. And they're actually working at doing carbon footprint offsetting for companies like IKEA and many others, even ourselves. And we're going to work with them to create the carbon credit scheme, which we hope to be able to pile on top of this initial investment to give you even more returns on your money. So let's walk over there now and check that out. Whew. Let's stop. Oh, you know what? Let's talk about the cows. You still rolling? All right, so here we have some cow shit, cow dung, which is amazing because this is actually another aspect of success, where you can see this herd of cows in the background here. Now, this is one of our neighbors who's contracted to essentially graze her cattle here, and they're doing the job of keeping the weeds down and fertilizing this plot. It's an absolutely beautiful thing, and that's one of the key elements of this Ventree plantation, is that we're not just suppressing other people from activating in this landscape. We want this landscape to grow and become more and more productive over time. So here we have beef and milk being produced in the same timber and the seed production model, which is also doing all those other beneficial things that we're talking about doing with these. We're going to walk this way. Nice cow. Very healthy, eh? Okay, so here you can see, come and step here. So here you can see the lower acreage, which I've been talking about throughout this video, where the flooding came just after planting our second and then again after our third plantings. And so in total, we've actually planted 75,000 seedlings in this site over the last 2 years. And now, because of all those challenges, we've decided let's do bamboo. Let's do really nice bamboo. So we've got this bamboo. It's just been put in, literally just within the last few weeks. The seedlings are very small, but I'm going to show you what some of them look like. There's one over there. I'll just put my leg in front of it so you can see here. Okay. So this is a species of bamboo. I'm forgetting the name at the moment. We'll put it up on the screen there. It's flood resistant, which means it likes the water. And we've decided to do a wide spacing with this because we're going to continue to do contract farming in here to keep the weeds down, because our budgets are quite low at the moment. and we can't allow the cattle to come into this acreage when we have young bamboo seedlings like this. It's just too detrimental. It'll kill the bamboo essentially. So these have just been put in. We've got good rains, not too much rains. It's right now as I'm speaking, it's a perfect season. So we're hoping that this stretches on for another month or two, which would be beautiful. And these in 4 months time, 4 years time, will be huge clumps that produce continuously for 40 years. And that's all going to be carbon footprinted by BVU, who are associated with companies like IKEA. And it's a beautiful thing because we're also going to participate in those carbon credits. And we're going to work with them to supply them with data and continue to study this. And the other good thing about BVU is that they have markets for this. So we don't really have to go far. Once these come up and we have really nice poles, we don't have to go far to try to sell them. And again, for the ecotourism, the lodges, the walking stick campaign, and also the twig furniture and all the different things you can make from bamboo, it's an unlimited list. It's really just an exhaustive list of things we can do with this bamboo to create that value and get that investment going.